In the midst of a huge recruiting week for Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman and his staff have already made waves across college football with their unique recruiting strategy. Hear why some teams hate Notre Dame for it, coming up next.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome into Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. Today is Thursday, April 4th, and thank you for getting your day started right here by making this your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer at Fox Sports, and you can watch this show on YouTube or you can listen wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching along on YouTube, please like the video below and subscribe to the channel, or if you're listening to the pod, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. This episode of Locked On Irish is sponsored by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire could feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs is finding the right people for your team faster and for free. Post a job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. Got a lot of great recruiting coverage for you today. In just a second, I'm going to be joined by recruiting insider Brian Smith to discuss Notre Dame's chances at landing one of the top quarterback prospects in the class of 2026. Plus, we do a deep dive on the other top prospects on campus this week. Then at the end, Brian has some great insight about how Marcus Freeman's recruiting strategy has started to change the landscape of college football and how the other top programs across the country have taken notice. Enjoy. Locked On's very own recruiting insider Brian Smith is back with me here to discuss a very big week for Notre Dame recruiting. Marcus Freeman and his staff are hosting over a dozen top prospects from the classes of 2025 and 2026 over the next few days, including four-star quarterback Brady Hart. So let's start there, Brian. We know Notre Dame has had a lot of momentum recruiting quarterbacks in recent years, landing guys like Kenny Minchie, then CJ Carr, and they've got a commitment from Deuce Knight. How does Brady Hart stack up with those guys?
Brady Hart plays at Cocoa, which is on the Space Coast, and he is a very athletic, basketball-looking kind of kid, long, lean kid, needs to add some weight. But to put things in perspective, he threw for 498 yards against St. Thomas Aquinas last year. Now, that's one of the top 5 programs in the country probably. So he knows how to do it. They had 4 DBs go to college. I mean, they smoked him. He has the ability to go out and make plays with his feet. He's a lot like a certain quarterback that just transferred in from Duke in terms of playing style. That would be how I put it. And at the same time, he's a kid that's still learning. Like, he's not on the same level as some other kids, maybe post-snap read. There's always 1 or 2 kids in a high school class. So he's got a high ceiling too. He's got a talented roster to throw to. Javon Boggs being one of them who Notre Dame is after, kid that just decommitted from Ohio State. That kid just torched the state of Florida last year. He had like 1,600 yards, all from Hart. They find ways to get him the ball, and Brady's a big part of that. But he is not a kid that Notre Dame fans should not think like he would be a kid I would take in 25 if he was a 25 kid. He's that good. He's the top 5 to top 8 quarterback in the 26 class, and he's got the dimension some of the other kids they're recruiting really don't because of the foot speed. Very, very unique kid. A little bit like Deuce. I mean, Deuce is freakazoid. He's a 42-inch vertical. You're not going to find many kids like that. Like, he could go play baseball, basketball, track, whatever. But this kid's similar. Notre Dame's kind of changed up their style a little bit with the recruitment of quarterback. They had a couple of different guys, different styles. Deuce would be the closest he's to, but Hart is a unique kid. It's still getting better.
It does seem like it's a 2-man race right now between Noah Grubbs and Brady Hart. They're both from Central Florida, and you and I actually talked about this before we started recording. Like, Central Florida is not a place that Notre Dame has recruited particularly well for a long time now. Now they're in the hunt for 2 of the top quarterbacks from the area. When you look at Hart and you look at Grubbs, do you see any significant difference between the 2, or do you think Notre Dame would be thrilled to have either one of them?
They'd be thrilled with either one. Grubbs is a different player. He's bigger in terms of thicker. He's more developed in terms of all the processing, but he's not the same kind of athlete. Noah is the sure bet. He's got probably a little bit stronger arm right now. But again, Hart hasn't filled out, and he's a kid that's more mobile. A little more risk, but there's a little more reward is my guess. But Noah is about as concrete a lot. Like, he could be a top 10 pick. It would not surprise me at all. He is a little bit more mobile version of like Brady Quinn was. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the style that Brady could move, but he wasn't going to be an RPO guy. You can run it with Noah, but he's better just chucking it and threading the needle. He can throw it down the middle and throw it on the line. Hart's similar, but he can take off too.
When it comes to quarterback recruiting, it always seems like guys commit earlier in the process, usually because most schools are only taking one quarterback per class. And even though it's still very early in the process for the class of 2026, I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of quarterbacks, at least at the top of the rankings, start committing here in the near future, because Jared Curtis just committed to Georgia. He's the number one overall player in the class of 2026 right now. So I think that, once that first guy commits, then more quarterbacks are going to follow. So do you anticipate, whether it be Hart or Grubbs, that Notre Dame finds out whether or not they're going to land these guys in the near future, or do you think it's going to take some time?
Well, those two know each other pretty well. They live an hour apart, a little over, something like that, from where they're at. I'd be surprised if they didn't already talk about that, because they both like Notre Dame a lot. I thought it was going to be Grubbs for a while. Now it seems like it's Trent Hart. I don't know what Noah's trying to do. Notre Dame, I know he told me to my face a month or two ago that Notre Dame was recruiting him harder than anybody. Maybe he's just not ready to decide, and maybe Hart is. There's a lot of posturing because they both have offers across the country, and it's very difficult. So I'm not sure which one it'll be, but it's going to be one or the other before June, if I was to guess. Because like you said, now that Curtis has made a decision, it's going to flip-flop right down the road pretty quick. I don't know who's next, but there'll be 2 or 3 more pretty soon, because recruiting sped up so much, as you know. And Tyler, it's gotten ridiculous, but not to get off topic. Quarterback, you either take your spot, man, or you can lose it. So it could be Florida State, it could be SC or whatever. Everybody usually just takes one. Do you want to preserve your spot or not? It's just a yes or no. It's really hard.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's where I think we're going to find out. Maybe it's Hart. Maybe he ends up committing here in the near future. I know some people have already predicted that'll happen. I'm a little bit hesitant just because he is a top quarterback. He's getting looked at by so many different schools. I could see him waiting it out just a little bit longer, but who knows? Once that first domino falls, you never really know what's going to happen. But outside of Hart, who do you think are the most important visitors on campus this week?
Oh, wow. To be honest, I think it's Notre Dame's the unique school nationally in this. I mean, there's a handful of 25 kids I'll talk about, but just generically, I want to say this. It's about the 26 class. They're so far ahead of everybody. And a lot of schools really hate Notre Dame right now because of this, because they're having to speed up a lot of things because Notre Dame's going into their backyard and taking kids. Like, they got Deuce Knight early. You know what I mean? Like, it's been really crazy. I think Taylor, getting him back on campus and kids like that over and over again, the local kids, any of those they can, is important. The guys that are on that cusp, I don't even care which ones they are. I mean, I got the list up here, but they're going to have some visitors that show up. They're recruiting Ohio and Illinois better, Michigan, et cetera, under this regime. And to be honest, that's not surprising. It's not like Brian Kelly's strong suit was ever recruiting. But at the same time, I don't know. I hope they get a couple more guys like Noah McHale. I would love to see them get that kid. He's supposed to be their day. Jaden Blair, et cetera. I don't really know where they're at in the commitment timeline. Like, I talked to Noah a few weeks ago. That's a great player, but he's a California kid. So you got to hit the home run with that one because it's far away. Jaden Blair too. And I'm sure the list I'm looking at is not anywhere close to finish, because there'll be kids there that hasn't been announced. But any of the kids that are far away, you got to hit that as a home run because they can't get to campus as easily. But they also got to find a way to get that Damian Shanklin kid back on campus. Right now, they ain't getting an edge rusher. That cannot happen. That's the spot Notre Dame always stinks at recruiting, and that's the big hole in the class. They got to get a pure pass rusher as well. It's not Shanklin. Who's it going to be? So need to see him back on campus, and he's only in Indianapolis. That's not hard.
Yeah, do you have any insight on Notre Dame's pursuit of Shanklin? Because I know at one point a lot of people felt that like the Irish led in that recruitment, and then Ohio State came in with an offer, and that started, or at least that seemed to throw things off a little bit. Have you heard anything, whether he's leaning one way or another since then?
Not on leans. It's just like he's going to take his time and do things. Some kids are just that way. And I know Marcus wants everybody in early. Well, this isn't the draft where you pick kids. So there's always going to be some kids that take their time. Defensive linemen historically get to do that because they're so coveted. I know it used to frustrate Holtz and some other guys too, but it's just the way it is, man. elite players wait until the end oftentimes, and Shanklin, I think, is a top 100 recruit. Maybe they get him, maybe they don't, but they got to have a backup plan. And right now, they really don't. I don't think they've done a very good job of preparing for that, unless they're about to get him to pop and nobody knows it. And in this world, anything's possible. But that's the one spot I think is very concerning. Marco Jones is a kid they're not going to pursue anymore, I've heard. I think that's a mistake. I saw him play recently. He's really talented. But, yeah, I don't know who else. It's a pure weak side, dip your shoulder and just go around the tackle guy. Everybody wants to see. Notre Dame never gets that kid. If they don't get Shanklin, who's it going to be?
Yeah, I hear your point, and I think with Shanklin, Notre Dame fans really want him. The fact that he's from Indianapolis makes him even more coveted, because it's like you don't really get that many really, really talented high school prospects from the state of Indiana. So when it happens, you absolutely have to land them. And Shanklin certainly fits that mold. So Notre Dame needs to get that done. You would think, like, considering the fact that they have so many guys already committed, that they could spend so much time and so many other resources on getting Shanklin. But we're going to have to see how it plays out. I want to talk about Noah McHale because you had some praise for him, to say the least, before we started recruiting. I know he's from California. I know that a lot of people think he's leaning USC. It makes sense. It's the hometown school. But what is it about his game that impresses you the most?
For a bigger player, he can cover pretty well. I saw him at a 7-on-7 tournament in Atlanta, and usually linebackers at 7-on-7 tournaments get eaten alive. They're just not as fast as the little twitchy receivers and all that. But he understands time and space, and he can handle himself in zone coverage. It's not like he's going to cover man-to-man for a 5'9", 170 kid. But this is still, it's touch. It's not his full aptitude either. And he was still pretty good. I know what he does in pads, and that's make moms in the stands very angry that he just smoked their child. In the box, that is a kid that could play 1985 Big Ten football, SEC football, Notre Dame football as a middle linebacker, and he's fine. But he's mobile enough to be a 3-down linebacker too. Those are rare. And that's what you got to have in today's game, man. You know, they try to run these plays as fast as they can and keep you from substituting. He won't get exposed. And that's why his offer list is just out of this world. You know, Nebraska, Notre Dame, SC, you name it. He's taking a visit to somewhere just about every weekend. Notre Dame would do well to get him. He'd be a kid that would play pretty early.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the highest rated prospects on campus this weekend. Another one of them is the safety, Jaden Blair, standout player from North Carolina. I really like him. He's 6'4". He's listed as 6'4", 190. I should always clarify that. But he's got great size and length for a safety. Notre Dame seemed like the favorite until Chris O'Leary left for the NFL, and Notre Dame is still in good position. I just think that they have some ground to make up, and I feel like with him being on campus this weekend or this week, it's a great opportunity for him and Mike Mickens to build on their relationship a little bit more now that Mickens has taken over recruiting for all of the defensive backs. And I feel like, you know, you definitely trust Mickens at this point, but they've got some ground to make up. But I just really like Blair as a prospect. How do you think he projects to the next level?
He's a really unique player. I don't know where he's going to play because he's so long and lanky. I'd be curious if they would consider using him at least against some teams as that hybrid nickel. And maybe against some others, he's your free safety. It just depends. His frame is truly unique. I'm not saying he's as athletic as like DJ Pickett, but it's a similar kind of deal. Real long kid, and he could play the back end pretty well and go up and get the contested ball and stuff like that. But you can play him in the box some too. Notre Dame is really big with their DBs, that they play physical and do different things. They wouldn't have him on campus if he wasn't. His film shows it. But this is a kid you can use as a chess piece. So recruiting-wise, I understand why they're after him, but he's got offers from tons and tons of schools. So I don't know where he's going to end up. Florida State and all these other schools are after him. I haven't ever spoken to him, but he's back on campus again. So that's a good sign for Notre Dame. They'll probably cut bait if they don't find out something knowing Marcus pretty quick. I mean, they spent a lot of time on him, but they've got two guys already in the fold. If they're taking a third one, somebody they really like, that's the other thing. They wouldn't be still bringing him in if they didn't really, really like this kid.
We'll be right back with Brian to talk more Notre Dame recruiting, but I wanted to take a second to tell you about FanDuel. The sports calendar is loaded, and FanDuel's making it even more exciting to get in on the action, because right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet the tourney, MLB, NBA, NHL, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a big win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Another player who I think is really talented, I'm just not sure which position they're going to play in college, is four-star linebacker Anthony Sacka, who actually just committed to Notre Dame this past week. He's got size, speed, and he plays against some of the top competition in high school football. So it kind of feels like, what's not to like about him? He's got a great resume, but he plays safety at St. Joseph's Prep, but is projected to play linebacker in college by some recruiting sites. What position do you think he is best suited to play?
Will.
Long term. I said the same thing, yeah.
He might play some of the overhang position, but again, no defensive player is going to win that battle consistently because you don't know who's going to line up in front of you. And if they see a linebacker out there, they're just going to move a running back or a really shifty receiver in front. There's just no chance. So he's all but has to move inside at some point. That way you avoid the one-on-one matchups in pass coverage. At the college level, there's no way to hell he's playing safety. He would get smoked, but he can hit. He's got a lot of length, and he's a kid that's smart. He's playing for a really good program in Philadelphia. All those things fit. It's just ironic. His dad knows a certain defensive coordinator at Notre Dame because they played together at Penn State. That is really wild. But now he's going to go to Notre Dame and get a play for somebody that's a family friend. That's a cool story within itself. But another long, lengthy, kind of athletic kid that you can utilize in a lot of different ways. Notre Dame's in a pretty good spot here. I mean, they can be selective with anybody else they take. And again, taking Sacka, this is a kid they like. They turned down some other guys to take him. They like him better than some other schools did. It's pretty interesting.
I also thought it was interesting that Penn State really wasn't even a finalist for Sacka, despite the fact that his dad went there. But it's also another example of Notre Dame landing a commitment from the son of a former player. And that's something that you and I have talked about before. That's a strategy that really seems to be working for Notre Dame. But they've got 19 commits in the class left. They still have several spots left. What do you think this class is missing? Is it a position? Is it a type of player? I mean, I could just point to the fact that they don't have any 5-stars committed, and that's an easy thing to say. They need that high-level guy. Talked a little bit about the edge rusher. What do you think is the biggest need left?
Edge rusher is the need every year. If you got 3 of them last year, you didn't get enough because everybody throws the ball now. So that's just a never-ending story. The other piece to this, and this is unfortunate, I know they didn't get Justin Scott, and I'm not trying to bring this back up. At some point, and I was talking to Driscoll about this, you have to sign a 310-pound kid that everybody wants. Notre Dame never gets that kid. So no waiting around, just walk in the door physically ready. And I know it's because the NIL money in the bag, they're not getting the kids. I get it. They got to do it anyway. If you're going to get over the hump, you got to get the kid that Georgia and some of these other schools want. I don't know how you do it. They got to get that kid too. Everything else, I think they're in pretty good shape. I mean, running back and all these different positions, you look at the depth chart before you even get into recruiting, they don't have a hole on their roster now that they're kind of fixing that with this class at safety. That spot, until this class, was definitely the biggest hole. But they've got 2 really good players. They might get another one in Blair. Be nice if they got him. But, I mean, they're doing a good job in general. Receiver, I think they're going to get a certain young man from Las Vegas, and that'll help things. I'm already kind of passing that. I just think they're going to get him. He's a fit. I've met him. Outside of that, though, man, I'm not really that worried. The class is pretty darn good.
It is, and I think one player in particular who could really benefit this class is Dallas Golden out of Florida. Notre Dame had a ton of momentum with him, and it seems like, I don't want to say Florida State is like taking the lead, but I think that they've been a little bit more aggressive with him. He's also from the state of Florida. That's your old stomping grounds. Is there any insight you could share with us about Dallas Golden and his recruitment?
I called him recently and spoke with him. That's a great kid. He plays at a program that won state last year. They used him at tailback, receiver, corner, all that stuff. He told me he wants to play nickel. I've never had an elite 5-star kid tell me he wants to play nickel because it's the hardest spot, and it's very awkward.
Yeah.
He told me he wanted the challenge. I'm like, you are really a different kid. Berkeley prep kids are way different. They don't normally fit in football-wise at Notre Dame, but this is a kid who plays tailback and Dom Sayo's offense, and he's as Lou Holtz offense as you can get. So, I mean, yeah, he's Lou Holtz reincarnated, but it's interesting because this kid's going to project wherever he goes, probably play corner. And Notre Dame or Clemson is my guess is where he'll end up. I don't think he's going to go Florida State. I really don't. But they got him to visit recently. It's possible he could end up there, but I just think he's looking for a different kind of challenge off the field. I just don't think he'll go to Florida State at the end. I really don't.
Okay, last question before we let you go. Marcus Freeman is entering his third season as a head coach. We know it's a pivotal year for all Notre Dame football coaches. We could go through the history, but I want to focus on how Marcus Freeman has evolved as a recruiter since the time he got the head coaching job till now, because he's always been an avid recruiter, and he made it such a point of emphasis when he was introduced as the head coach in his opening press conference, and he was like, I'm going to be the lead recruiter on every single prospect. That sounded great at the time. I don't think it was particularly realistic. Now, he's still the lead recruiter on a lot of guys, but I think he's changed his style and his approach, and he's done that with the entire staff around him as well. So even though he's still recruiting really aggressively, have you noticed a shift in strategy, in style, or messaging from Freeman from then until now?
It's slight, but I mean, his personality and all that, he likes being involved. So that's not going to change. He'll eventually wear himself out and retire at some point, whenever that is. I mean, that's going to happen. He's going to burn out faster than some other guys, but most recruiting guys do. The difference with him is he's focused so well, and his staff has such a concrete plan. They've changed college football. Teams hate Notre Dame because they're going into other schools' backyards and getting kids early, making them like recruit earlier. You know, they're the opposite of Clemson, if you will, in that regard. Although they're both pretty conservative about who they offer, they really want kids to commit early, and they've kind of changed the trend. Like, they're already all but moved on to 26, except for a handful of the kids we just talked about. It's crazy. I think that's the big thing with him. Either you want to be with us or not. This is our group. This is what we're doing, and we're going to move forward. We're not going to pay the bag and pay the NIL. Like, I found out a story today about a kid that's not going to go to the school he really wants to because somebody else offered him some more money. Marcus would tell that kid to get bent. He just would. And this is a really, really good football player. He just won't do it. So it's a different philosophy. And I think that trend right there, I know it's a taboo thing to talk about publicly, but if you don't hand out money to certain kids, they're not coming. That's a problem for Notre Dame in some ways, but on the back end, how many of those kids are going to be loyal to you?
Yeah.
It's a big debate in privacy amongst us in the recruiting industry. And if you look at it, like Georgia they don't go pay the NIL up front. They're passing on some kids that I know about. They're elite, some in their backyard, et cetera, but they're a team that always ends up at the top. You know what I mean? Like, Alabama doesn't do it that way. Most of these schools are doing it out of desperation because they don't know how else to catch up with those other schools. Notre Dame is one of the few that can still go recruit against Georgia, against Florida, Texas in their own backyard and get away with it. And it's part of the reason a lot of fans from other schools absolutely loathe Notre Dame, but that's a story for another day. It's just unique that Marcus been able to do it so early. Like, their focus has been so good, and they've just changed the landscape completely. Nobody else even has 15 commitments. I don't even know if anybody else got 11 or 12.
I think 11 is like the max right now from
Notre
all the
Dame's
other
almost
top
got
schools.
twice that many. You know what I mean? Like, it's insane. So they have changed college football without using NIL. Nobody else has done that.
That is a great note to end it on. He is Brian Smith, recruiting insider, who does a ton of great work for all of the college shows here at Locked On. And Brian, you know I always appreciate the time. We'll talk again soon.
All right, buddy. Thank you very much.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV also offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing television. And it provides access to millions of movies and television episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big professional leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to stay up to date on all the latest in the world of sports. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, and cooking videos as well. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. To learn more, visit amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. Remember to get your mailbag questions in. If you want to be featured on tomorrow's show, you can drop them below in the YouTube comments, or you can tweet them at Locked On Irish or slide in the Instagram DMs at Locked On Irish Pod. Also, please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.